And to be clear, I usually, so in my book, I don't talk about any type of posting strategies because, as you said, they change all the time.
By the time it's in print, it's probably out of date, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, so mine is all about, as you said, identifying your audience. Who are you actually, you know, not who you want to be selling to, who are you actually selling to? Who is actually buying your product? Who is actually becoming a fan? Who is
Mm.
actually engaging, not who you think it is. And, too many times I'll have people that, they think they know who they're selling. And when we sit down and actually look at the metrics, the insights on the social platforms, look at the Google Analytics to see who's coming, they're blown away to find out, oh,
That's my biggest customer. That's your biggest customer.
and then change the messaging. Let's find the right platform to target them. And so, yeah,
But so if and let's dig into the book a little bit. Tell us about your book. It was released back in November.
it was.
Wonderful prop right there.
Yep.
And there's controversy on how it's said, right? So how are they saying it in Florida?
Unio.
So I was like, is it Unio? Is it Uno? Mhm. So
Well,
Unio. So and what's the book about, Beth?
yeah. So it's Unio, the art of intentional community building. And like many of us during the last 2 years, I was shut in and had some time on my hands. And I love writing. It's my favorite. It's my favorite first form of communication.
Mm.
It's my love and passion. Um, And so I always intended to write something, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and write the big book of everything I know. It'll probably be a very short book. And as I was writing, it kind of wrote itself. I was pleasantly surprised with some of the tips. I'm like, oh, I do actually know something. Oh, I could share that. That's a cool story that actually has a purpose and people can learn from that. And
Mm.
so it's all about the lessons I learned while building Florida Swim Network and Florida BlogCon. And it starts off with kind of what makes a community, environment, economics, and then social.
Mm.
Environment, it can live online or it can be in person, meaning a brick and mortar store. It can be
Sure.
hybrid of both. The economics, and this is where I think a lot of community builders fail. You got to have money. If even if it's a passion project, it's your time and energy, and time is money. So you've got to have some type of way to monetize it, whether it's crowdfunding through Patreon, whether you're selling merchandise, whether it's an event where you're selling tickets. You got to have, and I think far too many times pure community builders forget that aspect. And so, even in marketing, you kind of forget everything has to lead to a bottom line. So, you've got to keep the economics. Then, of course, the social, you know, do people feel included? Are you targeting the right fans? Um, you know, are you patrolling your environment? Meaning, do they feel safe there? Are there trolls that are giving them a hard time? What kind of tone are you
Oh,
setting?
okay, good point. Sure. Really good point. And I think what's so interesting about your experience is that you were saying there, like the environment. You've experienced all of the environments because, like, Florida BlogCon was a massive event, brick and mortar, physical, people traveling from all over the country. And the US is a big old country. And internationally, I suppose, there's people like me coming to speak at it, but also I know that people who were attending had traveled internationally as well. Like, so you've got this global event that you're putting on in one of the biggest convention cities on the planet, right? You're actually managing to find space for that event. There was food, there was everything. Like, it was so slick. Um, there was no doubt and not only that, but when I was there, I remember we were lining up for tacos, and I was super excited. Or soft tacos, delicious. And we were lining up for those. And I remember talking to someone in the audience who was telling me about the food last year. They were like, "Oh, this is going to be great because last year they had these guys come around, and this is a local thing." And I was like, it was so well put together. But that in itself is such a difficult thing to do. But to market it to the point where, what's the Wayne's World quote? If you book them, they'll come. But I know
Yeah.
it's Field of Dreams, but still. But if to the logistics of putting that on, I'd be happy to sit and talk to you for hours, right? Just about how you made that happen. But
Uh,
but that wasn't the magic. That was just some place for these people to go, right? The magic was actually the community and the people who were attending, and that, like, to do that, that's an incredible thing. But also, there you were talking about a bricks and mortar or online. Well, what was your swimming channel, right? What was it? It literally was something which was localized in a place, just down the road, which you were going to watch your kids swim, right? And at the same point, you then put that online and built that community as well. So you've taken essentially like a snapshot of a community locally and then put it out online. I think that environment, like the where, people get too bogged down in like geolocation, but the
Yep.
where is so important, and you have to keep assessing it. It's so often that you're like, well, it's definitely here. It's always been here, and you find out like it was there, but actually now it's here and it's here, and these are much more significant, and that's where to go. And it doesn't mean it's social. It doesn't mean that it's oh, now I've got to get TikTok because that's where everyone's going to be. Maybe, maybe, but more importantly, are you getting in front of them? Um, Economics, I think, is such an important part because that environment is directly located, right?
Yep.
You could have done Florida Plug for the year that I went. That could have been done in a hotel. Yeah, I know. You put on a great event, but it could have been done right.
Yeah.
And I've been to some great conferences, content wise, in a hotel back room, which is all very fancy and yeah. There's food and it's like an event. Um, but that's a low level in comparison to what we went to, right? I was so excited to speak in a massive auditorium full of people, great big screens, my name in lights, Tony's name in lights, right? And every speaker had that, but more importantly, everyone who went to FLBlogCon had that, like, I'm going to watch something real. Like this person knows what we're talking about. Look at the backing. How did you even come to start that, right? With FLBlogCon, how do you even begin to find the money? That's not a self-funded thing because surely you'd be living in Full Sail University now.
So the story of FLBlogCon is it's truly homegrown. So I was teaching school at the time. So my background was actually I was a classroom English teacher, teaching middle school students how to write and uh, writing. So Jay, I'm assuming when you were growing up, your teacher assigned you papers to write that you had to write.
Homework, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And you probably had no interest in writing it. You'd get through it, turn it in, she'd grade it, and then you'd never see it again, right? It'd go in a door or trash and all that. So that is a challenge of an English teacher. So I wanted to get my kids to write for a real audience. We're talking the 1990s.
Hmm.
And we went to the library. They found magazines, they liked it. We looked up the submissions editor, and then they went back and they had writing for a goal in mind. It might be
Amazing.
poetry magazine. All the boys wanted to write for Sports Illustrated, which is a big sport. They all were like, "Oh, we're going to write for that." But what I found, they would do like 5 and 6 drafts of this whatever they were writing. And
Sure.
so, from a teacher point of view, by the time I got the paper, it had already been proofread several times by friends to make sure it's
Yeah.
got as perfect as possible. They had enriched the story. I mean, it made my job so much easier because the writing was so much better when I got it. The kids enjoyed the process because they were writing for a real audience. So anyway, and by the way, some did get published, not in Sports Illustrated, but some did get published. So fast forward to the end of my teaching career, which was right around 2010, and blogging was a thing. So they no longer had
Sure.
to submit to a submissions editor, they could just publish their own work. So I wanted to learn more about blogging. I start looking at blogging conferences. They're in Chicago, New York. They're all in these fabulous places that as a teacher, I could not afford plane ticket and hotel fare at.
No.
I could not necessarily go to my teaching administrators and be like, hey, I need a week off to go to a blogging conference. So my husband said, well, why don't you have a blogging conference? You've got some blogging friends here. So I went around to all the biggest bloggers in Orlando, and we were so fortunate that we had Jeanette Johnson of Jay's Everyday Fashion, one of the biggest fashion bloggers in the country. We had Rochelle Lucas, who was a travel blogger, one of the biggest in the world. We had Visit Florida, which is a tourism bureau. They agreed to speak. So I went around to all these people and I'm like, will you please speak if I have a conference? And they said yes, they donated their time. I mean, they knew I was a sport teacher just wanting to have this conference. So I put it out just on social, and we could accommodate 100 attendees in the little school gym on Saturday that I taught at. So Saturday morning comes along. The maintenance guy and I are out there setting up the tables, we're setting up the chairs, we're bringing in the projector, rolling it in because this is where they're at. Yep, yep, yep. And I don't know what I was thinking. It was just me and the maintenance guy, and he took off as soon as it was set up. So I'm standing there, and we had a restaurant donate some baked goods that I had out on the table, and that was the snack. I didn't have coffee. I had nothing. And two teachers that I taught with showed up, and they're like, "Hey, Bess, we're just curious about what you're doing. Do you need any help?" They saved my butt. They took over, they went outside. One went to her classroom and got name tags for people to write that. I hadn't even thought of that.
Genius.
And yeah, yeah. And so they took care of the check-in. I greeted the speakers, we got them all set up. And it was this magical moment, not because anything I had done, but because the local people were so excited there was something here for them. And they
Mm.
were excited about learning from quality people that everybody kind of pitched in. And let me tell you, I was taking notes on what to do the next year. So we had Ford Motor Company. One of their marketing people actually attended that first event. They loved it. They're like, we want to leverage this. They said, we want to be your presenting sponsor for the next year. That brought the money in. Full Sail University, they had had somebody attend. They're like, oh, we need to upgrade where you have this. So that's how we ended up at Full Sail
Amazing.
University. And, actually, sorry, we ended up at the Orlando Science Center that year and then Full Sail University. It was a year later that happened. But, it was trial and error learning things. But it wasn't anything that I did other than be a really good student and take notes and listen to a lot of people on what to do the following year better.
Why are
And
why are the people who have had massive success at very, very difficult things always the humblest, wonderfulest people?
oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I'm sure you did not a damn thing, Miss Bess.
Well, I had some great planning teams. I had Josh Murdoch, Katie Widger. I had some people that are like, hey, we want to help the next time. And I actually talk about that in my book. There's five different personalities in any community. You have the teacher, the mentors that you learn from. You have the cheerleaders, like my mom, that can't help you in any way, but they just really want you to do well or want the community to succeed. They're important. They are
Okay,
important. They're
good point.
important. And then you have the how can I helpers. And those are the people that are like, I love the mission. I love what you're doing. How can I help you succeed? I have skills. Put me to work. Those are the godsends. And I had a planning team full of them that were amazing. And then you have the naysayers. And as you know, the naysayer can also be the voice in your head.
Yeah.
And then you have the waiters and watchers, which we don't have a long enough time period for me to talk about them. They're
luckily, luckily, there's a really good book where you can dig into this more.
Yep.
Um,